Hello, beautiful people. Come in and breathe. Let's sit down for this one because I didn't see it coming either. This is for the girl who feels unqualified, who has been applying, crying, praying, and still hearing crickets. This is for the one who looks at her resume and sees gap, not glory. This is also for the girl who has been through so much life that experience doesn't fit neatly into a LinkedIn box. I want to tell you how I went from overlooked to getting 3 job offers. Not because I had a shiny resume or a referral from the top. I didn't. I had pain, I had prayer, I had preparation. And somehow that was enough. Now, if you listen to the last episode, I promised to share how I got these 3 jobs. For background context, I wasn't looking for a career role. I was looking for a co-op job. It felt like the world to me because at that point in my life, this was my second year of university, and I knew I wanted to go through school and I wanted school to go through me. So I was in all the programs. I was in the volunteer program. I was in the co-op, ASPA co-op program. I was also on the ASPA student council. I was everywhere. Any event we had, I was going. So I was trying to build my experience because I knew that along the way I would need it. At that time, I'd never worked a full-time job or even a job in my life. I was volunteering at my church. I was volunteering in school. I didn't really see the absolute need for looking for a job at that point because things were still going well for my family. Tuition was paid, school fees, rent was paid, everything, basic necessities were paid. So looking for a job wasn't my priority, but having the student experience was. At that time, I went into business school and I was like, let me know what the real world looks like, because once I'm done with co-op, I would have at least 1 year work experience. And when I'm done with school, I would have real world experience. That was my reasoning at that time. So I went through the whole process. I applied because I'm naturally a go-getter. So I applied, I got into the co-op program. But during the co-op season, you usually have placements where you can have 3 options. You put who your first option is to work with and what industries based on what you're studying in school. If you're in supply chain, finance, accounting, entrepreneurship. I was studying entrepreneurship and small business. So I wanted to work with a small company to see how they were running their small business operations. Those are the companies that I put on my resume. But unfortunately, I wasn't matched because they were looking for someone who had already worked and had experience. In Canada, in second year, most people have already had work experience because at 15, 16, 17, 18, they've worked different jobs. Me coming from Nigeria, I had never worked. Most of us had never worked before till maybe you're done school and then you go to the process of your NYC and then you apply for a job. That's the natural process back home, except if things are not working out. So I had that working against me. You're wondering what I put in my resume when I was applying. I did have a ton of volunteer experience. I saw the career advisor and she put me through on what to put on my resume, on my cover letter. I put like a wealth of volunteer experience, and because in church I was volunteering on the interior decor team. I was actually an assistant team lead there. I was in the choir. I was also part of the ESCO in the choir at that time. Then I was also a student. I helped doing orientation. I was volunteering. So I would come and help new students settle in, take them to Polar Park, see that I was through ICM. When I went to SPA, I was also in like I said, volunteering on the ASCA team. That's ASPA Student Cooperative Association. I was an event on the event team there. So I did have a wealth of experience. I just didn't have paid work experience. I put all of that in there. What I focused on my resume was transferable skills. For each job that I applied for, I had to really tailor my resume to fit the role. So whatever skills they were looking for, I would highlight those skills on my resume and cover letter. I got better at doing that because I got a lot of rejections. Now, mind you, I was in my second year. The first time I placed, because everybody finished the whole recruitment process for placement, and I didn't have anyone that wanted to work with me because I didn't have the kind of experience. Because they were small companies, they needed someone more competent, I guess. That's my excuse for them. So I had to go out of my way to look for jobs. And at that point in time, it was such a hard thing to do. It was so hard because, first of all, I didn't know how employment was done here. I didn't know the marketplace. I didn't know anything. So I had to really study a lot, apply to as much, a lot of companies. I applied to a lot of companies. God bless my advisor at that point in time because she was really helpful. She also used her connections. I had to be going to events. I dropped because at that point, as a co-op student, you really have business cards. So I dropped my business cards in different places. I was like, I'm looking for a job. Pride is out of the door. I need to get placed. I felt like I was fighting for my life. It made me think outside the box. Most people were placed, and I was like, I still need to be placed. I really want to be placed. I want to do this core program. So I went to the places that were having events. When they were having job fairs, I went there. I dropped my resume, my business cards, my cover letter. I had a generalized cover letter and what do you call it? Resume that can apply to different places, because if I'm going to job fairs, I can't really tweak my resume. Then I would go to my advisor, and she was so helpful. She used her network to help me find a placement. At the end of the day, I can't even remember how many resumes I dropped. It was a volume game. I was not looking at wherever. I just needed to be placed so that I would not get kicked off the program. Mind you, it adds 1 year to my already 4 years experience. So I was going to graduate at almost 5 years, but it was worth it. I really wanted to experience everything, like co-op, student placement, stuff like that. Now, I wasn't rejected because I didn't have a good GPA. I was top student. To get into ASPA, you had to have minimum 3.5 GPA at that time, right? So I was at least doing something. I think I had a 3.8 or 3.9. It was a long time ago. And you had to keep your GPA up to be in the core program. So that was something, right? I had to sit down and learn how to interview because I spent so much time creating my resume to look a certain way. Apart from the resume, there has to be the interview. I got so good at practicing interviews. There were a lot of people that called me for interviews, and I stopped being nervous because I would just show up. I would figure out what the company wants and then answer their questions. I learned that after they finished asking me questions, it was my turn to ask them questions. Sometimes I would put them on the spot and ask them a lot of questions. So it became like a numbers game for me. I was getting so good at going to interviews, so good at answering interview questions, like, tell me about you. I got really good at telling them about myself, what I do, and examples, behavioral examples. I was just rocking all those things right now because I spent so much time answering questions on interview questions. I don't really freak out when I'm having an interview, except when it gets into technical interviews, because when you've sat down in business analyst interviews, it gets really technical, and sometimes I'm like, my brain leaves the window. I think I've hacked it, hopefully. One thing that I tried not to do was rewrite my resume to sound so smart. Like I did it and there was still silence. And one thing I got complimented a lot about was how I spent a lot of time volunteering. Like I spent a ton of hours volunteering and it paid off for me in the end, right? Let me tell you, there were times where I felt like I had failed. Like, why did I spend a lot of time volunteering? Why didn't I find a job? But how will I find a job if I don't have job experience? So I feel like I was taking the right steps to do things. I prayed a lot. I feel like that period brought me close to Christ because I was like, I don't want to just go through, the reason why I want to do this, Lord. So how can I get better at writing resumes, submitting, interviewing, and stuff like that? For me, when people called me into the room after looking at my resume, I felt like I had to prove a point that I could be part of that. Let me tell you, my first job, it was wonderful because I always have known that I have administrative strengths. Like that's a very strong strength that I have, being administrative, organizational, right? So my first job was as an administrative assistant to a to a company. So yes, before we go into my first job, let's go into how I got these three jobs. I spent a lot of time interviewing. I mean, I went everywhere. In fact, there was a time I got lost. But thankfully, I had the habit of leaving the house at least 2 hours before the interview because at that point I was not mobile. I had to use the busing system. If you're using the bus, you need to be prepared ahead of time. And so I'll take the bus. I've been to a job interview. I've been on the bus for 1 hour, 15 minutes. And I'm so grateful that I didn't get that job. I got called in for a few top positions as well. I'll just say God's mercy and grace and determination and me not applying to only places that I thought were like where my resume would take me, but where I knew God would take me out. I applied to places in the government, public sectors. I applied everywhere. I did get called for 3 interviews. I got 3 offers. The deadline to join the co-op program, get placed, and everything signed was like 3 days, and I was still going to interviews almost every other day. I had an interview, and I was just so busy. School was out of session. It was summer break. So that was all I spent that summer doing, actually from spring to summer because the placement was during summer break. So June, July to September was supposed to be the placement period. Around May, June, I was looking for placements. That's all I spent my May, June doing after exams. I got a job offer with an executive search company. They help place top. You know how now I'm trying to look for the word that they do. They help people search for jobs. Or for the lack of a better word, they're like a headhunting firm. But if you ever say that, they take offense in it. But really, that's kind of what they do. People that are looking for doctors, engineers, lawyers, companies like that. They're the ones that do the hiring process and all of that and settle everything for you. I was doing administrative work. I learned a lot about HR there. I learned a lot about hiring and stuff. So I was the administrative assistant. The other job was in the heavy metals industry. I don't even know what took me there. But as I said, I cast my seed and it was like in a male-dominated field. The salary was good for starting. The other job was with the library or something. I can't remember. It wasn't even in the top ones I was competing for. I was looking at these 2 offers because they had very good starting salary or hourly salary. I was looking at a few things that stood out for me. Is this a job that I would be happy to go to tomorrow? Where can I learn the most from? Which of my skills will be applied here better? The other one for the heavy metal industry was more content. Content was not really even a thing, but they were thinking so much ahead. Like, we'll do content creation, planning. They were creating an offer for that. But this one was in an already established firm, and I saw that I could learn something better. At that point in time, I was in my second year. I hadn't chosen my majors and minors. I didn't chosen my majors and minors. You had the choice to have a major. I was like, my major might be entrepreneurship and small business, and my minor was in HR. At that point, I think I can go into this place and see what they had for me. And it was a very interesting placement. And I'm so grateful that I made that choice. It was mind blowing for me because I had a deadline to get back to these people. And then when I had this offer, it was like, now I have to reject someone so kindly. It's hard to do after you worked so hard to get there. But at the end of the day, I was able to get in and work in that first job. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Terry, thank you so much for believing in me. I learned a few things on the job, learned better about how to format your resume, learned more things, and how to negotiate for your salary, stuff that you ordinarily wouldn't learn in your first job. I got the opportunity to learn that. And then I'm so grateful because that job made me meet other people as well. And also the things that they were very into trade fairs, trade shows. And I was the one representing the company because that's what I do. I got to learn a lot more about the company, learn a lot more about the industry, about how the hiring system works. And then my second placement was with Manitoba Civil Service Commission. I was a HR analyst. So I was really going into the HR field. And there I even solidified the things that they're looking for, how to interview. I sat down on a lot of interviews as well for that company. I really, really loved it. But stuff happened. I was supposed to do my last placement there, but I couldn't because of life. I had to switch schools. When I was talking about my financial difficulties, I had to leave ASPA and I decided to go to University of Winnipeg and completed my degree there. So, of course, there are a lot of ups and downs, but one thing that stood out to me is that delay is not denial. Even if something is delayed, it doesn't mean that you're disqualified. Aim higher. If you think you're not going to be qualified for something, just apply for it anyway. You can never tell. In fact, all the jobs that I've gotten in my lifetime, most times I just apply. I'm going to apply. And if they say no, that's fine. But if they say yes, then we'll figure out what happens next. Because most times you are more qualified than you think you are. You definitely are not behind. Sometimes the yes comes when you let go of looking perfect. You have to fight for some things. You can't be all calm and collected when something is on the line. You have to fight for it. To do that, you have to let go of looking so perfect, so polished. Just go, be passionate, be yourself. Being myself and being passionate actually landed me a few more jobs than being so stuck up. Practical steps that helped me and might help you too is tailor your resume and tailor your application based on the job you're applying for. Don't just send the same resume everywhere. Another thing is using your pain points as strengths. During interviews, if you don't have practical experience. Like they tell me about leadership skills. If you've never been in a leadership role, like now, I'm a firstborn daughter. I've had a lot of time being a leader by leading my younger ones. Tell stories that show your creativity. Creativity will take you a long way. Don't lie. Just be creative. Speak from the heart. Sincerity matters a lot. And if people cannot recognize your worth through that, then you're not supposed to be working with them. It is also very important to have a trusted mentor or a voice to review your application. I used to find it hard to give anybody my resume because I felt like they would judge me. If you have somebody that looks through your resume and tells you the truth, it is priceless. Now, one thing I've learned, even recently when I was looking for another job, the goal is to send as many resumes as possible. There was one time I was sending out about 50 resumes every single day. It can get depressing, can get sad. You're sending out resumes and you're not getting any replies. But send those resumes out. And if you're looking for a job, don't just apply to anything and anywhere. This is me talking to you now that I'm older and how I'm approaching applying for jobs as opposed to when I was applying when I was younger. Now I have a bit more experience. I do have some gaps on my resume because I had to take time to recover from being ill. But during that time, I learned so many different skills. So how do I place that on my resume? I've worked for myself. I've created content. I'm doing podcasting. These are skills that I'm doing all by myself without anybody's help. And now, except for YouTube, that I'm having my family helping me with setup and stuff. But they're not always going to be there. I'm approaching employment differently this time around. And this is what I am doing. First of all, I'm only applying to places that I actually believe I want to work with. Even though they seem like they're too high up there, I don't disqualify myself first. I apply. If they get back to me, that is great. If they don't, I apply more. The more you apply to places that you think is on your level, you keep believing that that's the only level you'll be. I apply with the confidence of a white male, like the average white male. He doesn't apply to something below him. He overestimates his capacity or his self. And once you go into places like that, if you're even hired, you realize that the skills you have are very much transferable. They are very much skills that you are using in everyday life. They just look differently in the assignments that you're given. So that's what I'm doing, and that's what is working for me. I apply to places that I believe I would love to work with and look like the ideal workplace for me. I don't apply to just anywhere, even if I'm applying to 50 places. Now, you might be wondering, where can I find a job? You go to companies that you like. You go to their website. Check if they're hiring. If they're not, they have a place where you can submit your resume just in case they start hiring. On LinkedIn, if you choose a job that you like or want to apply to, research that and then apply. Another thing that I do is usually they release top employers in the city. If they say top employers in Toronto, I go through the whole list, click each company that I think I would like to work with on that list, check to see if they have any availability or if they're hiring. If they're hiring, I apply. That's another way to look for places to apply. You can look for at job boards like LinkedIn, Indeed, Workapolis, where else? Glassdoor. There are many places to look for jobs. There are job boards. If you want to work with the government, go to government websites, depending on the state. So there are many places you can look for jobs. And I hope you find this helpful. When you're preparing for interviews, now, my approach to answering interview questions has changed because I've worked with business women. I've been a coach before and a consultant. So I know the kind of answers that get people to look up, less about myself and more about what they're looking for in that interview. I ask them questions. Could you tell me more about the role? After I answer their questions, like if you're looking for behavioral questions, let's say, okay, tell me about the time where you used so and so skill. I wouldn't just go rambling. I think about why they're asking that question. And then I answer based off of what they're looking for specifically in their questions. If I'm not sure, I'd ask them again, could you please say that in a different way so that I can understand and answer better? There's no harm. The interviewer might be nervous sitting there. I'm also nervous. So I try to make them feel as comfortable as possible, except if the place is so stuck up, which I don't even want to work in a place like that in the first place. So like you get the vibe of the company by these people that are interviewing you most of the time. Like, I got this job offer before, and honestly, I knew that if I worked in that place, it would be toxic because of all the tech bro lingua and the way they were speaking at the interview. I was like, man, God, thank you for the offer, but no. I still went for the interview. I didn't think I was going to get hired, but I got an offer. I'm believing in myself now. I'm applying to as many places daily as possible. Going to interviews with confidence, knowing that every penny and the time they're spending is worth it as well. So I hope at the end of the day, you can believe that even though everything isn't working as much or as best as you thought it would, you find this helpful. Now, I know I've spoken about the physical things. Remember that favor can find you even when you feel unseen. God's favor is upon you and surrounds you like a shield. So go with that confidence. You've got all it takes to find that job of your dream. And I hope you found this episode helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao for now.